one, it's very similar. Plus, we have very good eyewitness evidence that explosives were in the buildings. Until 9/11, no building in modern architecture had ever collapsed due to fire. On 9/11, 3 buildings collapsed purely due to fire and some damage to the infrastructure. This is a hotel that burnt in Madrid in 2005, and it burnt for 24 hours. It did not collapse, because modern buildings are designed not to collapse, even with the most severe fire. And on 9/11, say 3 buildings went down because everybody forgets, or many of us forget, that later on in the day at the World Trade Center, building 7 that you see here suddenly fell down like a pack of cards, even though it was never hit by an aeroplane. It had minor debris damage from the collapse of the Twin Towers, and yet, if you look at the actual fire, which we are told was what collapsed the building, there's not much. The official explanation for why this building fell down, and here are the fires at their worst, is that the fire was so intense inside that it created, quote, a new phenomenon where the whole building fell down because it was so hot. Now, if that were true, they should have evacuated every building in Manhattan the next day. This building had the CIA headquarters in it. It had Mayor Giuliani's Emergency Management Committee headquarters there. It had many other important institutions. It was built to withstand impacts from aeroplanes, anything, because it was so important. And then they tell us it fell down because of a fire like that. By the way, the Enron scandal, that was big back then, remember, was being investigated from this building. And crucial documents got lost that day. No shame. Was that the idea? If you look at the footage of the collapse, just before the collapse begins, look at the side of the building and you'll see little puffs suddenly go down the side of the building, looking again like little explosive charges going off. What's the evidence? Well, here is a gentleman who was one of those who witnessed explosives on the day. This man is William Rodriguez. He was the caretaker of the North Tower on the day of 9/11. And here we see him being decorated by George Bush for being a hero, because he went back into the towers with the firemen and helped release lots of people. And many people owe their lives to this man. But he and the firemen reported explosives going off inside the building while they were in there, in the 45 minutes or so before that tower they were in collapse. And others have backed this up. There were explosives going off all the time. The first explosion that he and his colleagues witnessed took place in the basement 30 seconds before the first plane hit. Think about that for a moment. When he tried to testify to the 9/11 Commission that was investigating this, guess what? They would not include his testimony. They would not include any testimony from any fireman or anybody that said, we were hearing explosions. There have been firemen who've now gone on record as saying, we have been told to shut up or we will lose our jobs. There is something very wrong with 9/11. There are a few more questions to consider because we need to get to the end. But think on these. Why were no fighter planes ordered to intercept the hijacked planes until it was too late? That had never happened before. Always you scramble jets with even the hint of a hijack. On 9/11, that didn't occur. There were various exercises going on that confused. The chain of command was allegedly confused, but even so, they made no attempt to intercept those aeroplanes. Why did the plane's transponders, the automatic beacons, fail? That had never happened in any hijack before. What was the purpose of the World Trade Center's strange maintenance power downs in the days before 9/11? People have described that one weekend the security cameras were shut off, sniffer dogs were removed from the building, and men came in with unknown equipment doing what? Was that when the explosives were placed? What was the significance of Marvin Bush, the president's brother, being responsible for the World Trade Center's security management? Interesting. And why was there unusual stock market insider trading in the days before 9/11? Somebody knew exactly which companies would be affected by 9/11, including the airlines. And they made a lot of money by basically betting that those companies would lose their stock. And lots of money was made. Somebody knew exactly who was going to be affected in the days before it occurred. Why did World Trade Center owner Larry Silverstein take out a destruction insurance policy just months before the attacks? Even after a bomb had gone off at the World Trade Center in 1993, nobody had thought to do that. Lots of money made again. One of the huge basement explosions recorded 10 seconds before each tower falls. In some of the raw footage of the Twin Towers, not the edited footage, you hear a thump. You see the camera shake. About 10 seconds before each one falls, you see smoke come up from the basement, and then the towers come down from the top. And demolition experts shown the footage have said, well, yeah, that's what I would do if I was going to destroy a building. You take the root of the building out, and then you collapse it down on top. Looks like controlled demolition. And why were nearly all the objects in the World Trade Center pulverized to fine dust? Rescue workers said you didn't see filing cabinets, you didn't see telephones or carpets, nothing. It was dust. That is evidence of a very high intensity explosive, probably thermite. And recent tests have shown there are thermitic particles in the dust from 9/11. It is a telltale sign of explosives being used. And yet, what were the one things that survived? The hijackers' passports. They found them on the pavement, well, some of them. So they know who the hijackers were. Some of the hijackers, by the way, claim they're still alive. So nobody listens to them. And why was World Trade Center wreckage illegally removed before any forensic examination could take place? This was the biggest crime scene in American history. There was no proper investigation. They removed it with indecent haste, so nobody could check. Well, there's one website among millions that are worth looking at if you want to know more. Some very good books out there. If I was going to recommend one book to read about 9/11, read the works of David Ray Griffin. He's a Christian theologian in America, very respected, an academic. His logic is impeccable. You cannot read his book and believe the official story of 9/11. And I say book, he's now written something like 8 books about it, and each one is more devastating than the last, because it proves we've been lied to, and it proves that somebody, maybe a small criminal element, but somebody within the American administration helped 9/11 or made 9/11 occur. It is the only conclusion you can come to. And we know how much it suited the powers that were at the time for that to occur. Because the wars in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and the whole war on terror has been extremely convenient for those who want control. And whether bin Laden was or wasn't involved, I don't know. But if he was, that was not the whole story. The more you look at the benefits of 9/11 to anybody who might want to control us, the more obvious it seems why they needed such an event to occur. And the world that we now live in today is a direct result of 9/11. The surveillance, the control by fear, which is the biggest thing going on in Britain at the moment, the new ID schemes, the microchipping, fear of global warming, of terrorism, in Britain health and safety regulations now make you afraid of little things like boiling a kettle that now you're not even allowed to do in some public halls unless you hire official catering staff. It's control, it's crushing the human spirit. And the whole global warming debate is a big one, because many people are questioning it. In a poll in Britain last week, 60% of people do not believe that we create global warming. There are many climatologists out there who challenge the whole global warming model. Many even believe we're entering a period of global cooling. At the very least, we need to look at how solar cycles work with this. And even if global warming is real, as they say it is, even if that is the case, the way it's being sold to us at the moment is fear. And when we're afraid, we give away our control to others. We allow ourselves to be controlled. And I can't speak for Belgium, but I can tell you that in Britain, it's now going crazy. People resent it. There is a massive feeling building up in normal people that they've had enough of being lied to and of being controlled and told they cannot be who they are. And of course, what's the latest thing that we have? Swine flu. Now, I'm not saying swine flu is not real, but there's a lot of issues around it. Many people are concerned that that's been sold to us as a massive fear thing. There have been less deaths from swine flu than normal flu creates every year. And yet now people are getting vaccinations with God knows what in it, left, right and centre, having their babies vaccinated for something that's not even that much of a threat. And many people feel these vaccines have not been tested properly. The very darkest of the conspiracy theorists believe they are deliberately there to introduce pathogens into our collective system that will slowly destroy us all. I like to think they're wrong, but it does make you wonder. And if nothing else, for God's sake, before you go take Tamiflu, find out about the side effects of Tamiflu. Even in a mainstream source like Wikipedia, Tamiflu is deadly. It's a psychotropic drug. Young people are having horrible nightmares, they're self-harming, they're committing suicide after taking Tamiflu. It doesn't even cure swine flu. And who's the main beneficiary of that? One of the key people that has been behind Tamiflu, who's been a major pusher for that company, is Donald Rumsfeld, colleague of Dick Cheney. Donald Rumsfeld was the American Secretary of Defense for several years under George W. Bush. He is behind Tamiflu. Now, do you trust this man? Well, I'll leave that to you to decide. However, if you are worried about swine flu, I do have a very good piece of advice for you. Don't do this. As long as you don't do that, you're going to be okay. It's fault. And oh, by the way, before we get to the good news, I've got to get some good news here. Have you heard about the various prison camps that many people believe are going up around the world? Particularly in America. You know, there's contradictory evidence, but there certainly are a lot of camps. They're empty, they take a lot of people, and they're there in case of a civil emergency. Now, what civil emergency might they be expecting? And this brings us back to the beginning of the talk, where we were talking about the prophecies and the predictions of something really due to happen. Now, many of the 2012 prophecies, whatever you think about them, seem based in astronomical observation. And many people believe that there is a cycle cosmologically which will affect us on a cycle, and that it's back round again. And some people believe we're passing through an energized region of space that is affecting the sun. And the sun affects everything, not least our climate. There's been a lot of coverage recently of huge solar flares and the worry about it. The sun has been breaking records in the last few decades for sizes of solar flares, coronal mass ejections, and other activity like sunspots. But now, it's gone very quiet. The last year, it's been the quietest it's been in over a century. UV emissions are down. Its brightness is down. Did you know that? It's going into a very strange cycle that may be natural, but we're not sure how to deal with it because we've never been through a cycle like this in recent recorded history. Some people are worried that this is the calm before the storm, that a huge solar flare could suddenly erupt, and are we ready for it? Because a lot of people have said it would knock out all the power grids of the world like that if one occurred, and we're not ready for it. And we could be reduced to a medieval lifestyle overnight if that were to occur. Is this part, at least, of what the 2012 prophecies mean? And yet, don't forget the predictions that we will raise to a new state of consciousness.